So this happens basically to many people. It doesn't matter if you're a woman, a man, child, um, if you're rich, if you're poor, it doesn't matter. A lot of people go through this. And this is something that, it's common, unfortunately, in a lot of relationships, marriages, and stuff like that. 1 out of 3 women are abused, you know. Um, I'm going to start by sharing with you how I met this individual. So I was 23 years old. He was 28 years old. And I had started visiting a ministry that I won't mention. Just, I don't want to, put them out there or anything because this ministry helped me in many, many, many ways. And everything positive that I am today is because of them. But I won't mention their name because I just don't, want to do that. But I met him. I was visiting a church, and I met him at the church. So when I met him, first of all, he was very handsome. He was tall, dark, and handsome. He was very intelligent, knew what to say, charmed me, gave me all the attention that, women love. And I had children. I had small children, and he was very attentive to them. And he was very attentive to me and my children. And at the time, as a woman, that you look for that in a man, so he was everything that I thought I wanted and more, you know. He was ministering. He was amazing at evangelism. He was a people person. When I looked at him, I looked at someone, and I looked at him and I was like, you know what? This is the kind of man that I want in my life. So I thought. Okay. So, I'm reading my notes here because I don't want to forget. Red flags. So when I got to know him and stuff like that, he started getting a little controlling. But I was so obsessed with him that I disregarded all the red flags. He wanted to control what I wore. He wanted to control who I spoke to. He wanted to control where I went, how long I was there, and even how I raised my kids. He started making comments about, that I was doing this wrong and all of that. And all that time, I'm thinking he had good thoughts. Like, he wanted to help me. He was trying to be there for me. So he was trying to like teach me. I was young, so he was older. I thought, this is my mind. I'm thinking, oh, he's just trying to teach me how to be a better mom. He's trying to teach me, how to do this, how to do that. That's how naive I was. And basically we were living two lives. So what happened was we ended up getting together, we got married, and we were in a home that we opened up for men to come in that wanted to change their lives. So basically we were a full-time ministry. While we were in full-time ministry, I experienced so many situations that were horrible. And that's the truth. I love God. I love ministry. I love my mentors. I love my pastors. I love the leadership, everything that the church represents. But my marriage was a hell. We got married. We went into ministry. It got worse. He started blaming me for his lack in ministry. He started blaming me every time that he would get into it with one of the leaders, or he would have a bad day with one of the guys, or things weren't happening as fast as he wanted. I would get blamed for that. So behind everybody, in front of everybody, he was one person, and behind our door, he was a whole different person. And this is what I lived with for years. And I'm going to share just a couple of things that I went through. There were so many of them, but I'm going to just share a couple. One time we took a trip to California. No, it was New York. And I had forgot his tie. So what does he do? He wakes up. He asks me where his tie is. I completely forgot it. This man gets on the bed. He kicks me all the way off the bed, smacks my face, and tells me how come I forgot his tie. This is while we're getting ready to go to a service. So that was one time. There were so many other times. It was very difficult for me because even though I loved him with every cell in my body, he hurt me in so many ways that years later today, it's still difficult for me to talk about it. And I've gotten people telling me, why are you still thinking about that? Or why are you still dwelling on that? And well, because he broke me. He took who I was and turned me to who he wanted me to be. I lost myself in that relationship. He started complaining about everything that he didn't like in ministry. He started complaining about how I looked. He started complaining about just everything that had to do with me, he complained about. There was a time, it was a Sunday morning, and we were intimate that morning before service. And like I said, I'm going to be very honest in this video. And as soon as he got up, he grabbed his shirt that I had ironed, but he didn't like the way I had ironed it. So he went and wet it. He turned it and kept turning it. And while I was still in bed, right after we were intimate, he smacked me in the face with that shirt and grabbed me by my hair and took me out of bed. Minutes after my intimacy with him. He locked me in a room, and he told me that if I wanted to act like a child, he was going to treat me like a child. So he locked me in the room while all the men were out there having breakfast. I was locked in my room. There were so many incidents, so many, that it will take me the entire day to get into, of all the things that I went through with him. If I smiled, if we were driving and I smiled and I just happened to look to the side, I will get smacked because he thought I was looking at somebody else. This is a man that claimed to love God, and I don't doubt that he did. I know he loved God, and I know he loved ministry, and I know he loved all of that. I even know he loved me, and that is as crazy as that sounds. But he never dealt with those demons that he had. And unfortunately, I got the worst of it. There was a few times that I woke up and he had his hands around my neck. And he said, do you know that nobody's here right now? If I wanted to, I can just snap your neck right now. And nobody would ever know that I did it. This is the life that I was living with this individual while in ministry. People thought we had the perfect marriage. People thought that we had it together. People thought that they never knew that there was violence behind those doors, because he was amazing when he was at the church or when he was doing ministry with the guys or whatever. And then here comes Diana, who protected him because she didn't want anybody to look down upon him, even though she was being abused. She protected him. I was empty. I was hurt. I was devastated. I was a walking skeleton. No feelings. I was numb to who I was because I was trying to protect my children from seeing what I was going through. I was trying to protect him so people won't look down on him or our marriage. I was trying to protect my family from knowing what was going on with us because I didn't want them to get hurt. I was dealing with all of that, being strong for everyone else while I was dealing with those demons. He always said he was sorry, and I always forgave him because I loved him so much that I wanted that marriage to work. I prayed and I prayed and I said, God, change him. Change his ways. But he didn't want to change. He thought he was okay with the way he was. I made excuses for him as to why he was the way he was. I said he's stressed. He didn't have a father growing up. You know, he was raised with a single mom. Didn't have a man mentor. He was involved with gangs, so I said he was raised in the hood. I made a million excuses to why he was the way he was. And that's the worst thing we can do. I didn't say anything to anyone until it was too late. Again, because I wanted to protect my marriage. I wanted to protect him. I wanted to protect my kids, my family. So all of that was in here. All I dealt with was in here. And it was not easy. And it still isn't. I knew that I wanted change in my life. And like I said, I love the Lord. And my pastors were amazing. They are amazing. The leadership. But my home was falling apart. And it was only my fault to blame. And as far as, you know, not getting help at the time, because I kept it to myself. I was very private about my life and what I was dealing with behind doors. I know that I wasn't alone. There was a lot of women going through the same thing I was going through. But we all did the same thing. We all hushed everything and we kept moving. And that's the worst thing any woman can do. Now that I'm out of the situation, I can look back and I see all the mistakes I made and all the help that I could have had I opened my mouth and said something to someone. But I was also scared because he was so violent. I was fearing for my life and the life of my children. And I just didn't know how his reaction would be. He was a time bomb. One minute, he loved me more than life. And the next minute, he had me pinned down with his hands around my neck, telling me he was going to kill me. There were a lot of times where I said, Lord, I can't do this anymore. But I kept pushing forward and I kept pushing forward because in my mind, I love God so much that I wanted my marriage to be perfect. And I wanted my family to be perfect. And I wanted everyone to think that everything was so perfect, when in reality, it wasn't. I was so unhappy, but yet I loved them so much. And sometimes we say, we make excuses for them and we say we stay because of the children and all that, but that's not why we stay. Our kids are better off without that situation in their lives. I protected him, protected the kids. And I wanted my relationship to be right because I felt like I had failed in other relationships. So I wanted this relationship to work because I wanted at least once in my life to have a marriage where people would look up to. I wanted a home for my children. I wanted all those things that a woman wants in a solid relationship. So I stayed. Why didn't I leave? I didn't leave because, again, I love God and I felt like I didn't want to fail him. I felt like if I would walk away, that's how messed up my mind was. I felt like if I would walk away, I was letting God down. I didn't walk away because of my financial situation, which wasn't the greatest, because of fear, because I loved him. And honestly, I just thought it was a normal thing. I said, marriages go through this. I was so naive. If you're in this situation right now, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you seek help. That you speak to your family, your friends, your leadership, your pastors. Let them know what's going on. A lot of people question why I wasn't 100% myself, why I wasn't giving everything in ministry, why I wasn't focusing the way I had to on my family. People question all of that. And they even commented, and I know, that people commented and, they looked at us like we were a reproach to the ministry or to the fam or to, an examples to others or whatever. But nobody ever knew what we were dealing with or what I was dealing with. Nobody. Until the end of the relationship, and then I started opening up and stuff, and then people found out and, whatever. But, I was being judged, or we were being judged, but nobody knew what was going on behind doors with me and my kids. He was never violent to my kids. He was an amazing stepfather to my children. They loved him with everything they had, just like I did. He was a great, spiritual person. He was a great stepdad, but he was a horrible husband. And I know this video might hurt some people, or they might misinterpret what I'm saying, but this is my story to tell, and I'm going to tell it like it is. The last time he beat me, he told me that he wanted to take a ride somewhere. He said that he wanted to spend time with me. I got dressed, I got a sitter, and we took a drive. He beat me for 4 hours. He would stop at every alley. He had my hair gripped in his hand. He would slam my face against the steering wheel. He will punch me. He will take me out the car. He will kick me in front of everyone outside, and nobody would help. Nobody came to my rescue. He will put me in the car again. Mind you, this was a man that was 250 pounds and 6'3". I'm 5'2". He beat me so bad and told me that I was going to die that day. For no reason. Just because he had a bad day. So we drove and drove and drove. And I just kept asking God, why am I going through this? God, I don't want to die today. And I kept thinking about my children and what they were going to do without me. Well, he's beating me. And the only thing that kept me strong was my children. So we drove up to this store. And he said, I'm going to drive behind this store and this is where you're going to die. I don't know how I managed to get out of his grip. And while he was driving, I threw myself off the vehicle. And I have never ran so fast in my life. And I went into the grocery store. The security seen that my face was swollen and my feet were bloody. And I was terrified. So they took me to a security room. This man got off his vehicle, grabbed a cart, went to the store, and was acting like he was shopping, looking for me. So they called the police. They were trying to get me to a hospital. All I was thinking was, I need to get to my children. So I told the police officer, I'll go to the hospital after I made sure my kids were okay, because I knew he had lost his mind and I was scared about what he was going to do to my children, because he loved my children and I was scared that he would take them. So the police took me to where my kids were, and sure enough, 2 minutes later, he came. And that's where he was arrested. After that, I made a decision to move. I moved out of town to a different state. And I got a job and I started my life. He went into a rehab because supposedly he was, so upset about the whole situation and what he had done once again. So he went into a rehab with the intention of getting out and trying again, believe it or not. So I got my stuff together, got my apartment, and did everything I had to do, was living with my children. And when he finished rehab, which was about 3 months later, he had nowhere to go. My kids begged me to leave him, stay where I was at. I did not want to do that. But I did it because I knew he had nowhere to go. Even though he did all of that, I still let him in because I did not want him in the street. And unfortunately, during this period that he was with me, I had given him 1 month to stay with me, to get his stuff together. And unfortunately, during this period, he died in his sleep. And I remember that I was devastated. For like 2 years, I was devastated because I loved him. And I wish things would have been different, but they weren't. So once again, if that's you, get some help immediately, because you might not make it. I did, by the grace of God, but you might not make it out of this. Get help, please. I've been able to move forward by breaking the silence, by talking about it, by sharing my experience as I'm doing now. I put myself first for once. I thought about my children and what's best for them. I thought about my family and how I drained them because they wanted me to be happy, and I just didn't know how to get out of the situation. But I thought about them for once. I got a support team behind me, people praying for me, ministering to me, prayer warriors, friends supporting me, there to hang out with, even if it's for a cup of coffee. So I got a support team behind me. And most importantly, I had to learn to forgive. And this has taken me many years to do that, because he hurt me so bad. But I've learned to forgive, because if I forgive, then I'm free. If I don't forgive, I'll be bound by this situation for the rest of my life. And I refuse to do that. So once again, I hope you learned from this experience, learned from my words and what I've been through and stuff like that. Please don't stay quiet. Please say something to someone. Get some help. There's so many resources out there that can help you. Do not stay in this situation. So thank you once again for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do so at the bottom and click at that notification bell so you won't miss any more of my videos. Thanks again for watching. God bless you and take care.